She was just a tired taxi driver trying to make rent. He was a stranger bleeding in her back seat, asking for one ride home. What she didn't know, the Mafia boss she saved that night would tear apart his entire empire just to keep her safe. The rain came down like bullets. Clara's windshield wipers couldn't keep up. She squinted through the blur, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. The clock on the dashboard read 2:47 a.m. 3 more hours until her shift ended. 3 more hours until she could crawl into bed beside Eli and pretend she wasn't drowning. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen mounted on the dash. Pickup request, Murphy's Bar, West Side. Cash fare.
Urgent.
Clara's finger hovered over the decline button. West Side at 3 in the morning meant trouble.
Drunks. Fights.
Men who thought a female driver was an invitation. Then the phone rang. It was dispatch. Clara, you there? I'm here, Tom. Listen, the guy at Murphy's. The bartender's offering $200 if you take him. No questions. Just drive. Clara's breath caught. $200. That was Eli's asthma medication for the month. That was the overdue electric bill. That was 3 nights she wouldn't have to work next week. What's wrong with him? She asked. Tom paused. Bartender says he's rough shape, but he's got cash. Lots of it. Clara closed her eyes. She thought of Eli's inhaler, nearly empty. She thought of the eviction notice tucked under her mattress. I'll take it. Murphy's Bar sat at the end of a street that looked like the city had forgotten it on purpose. Neon beer signs flickered in dirty windows. A man in a stained apron stood outside, smoking under the awning. Clara pulled up, rolled down her window an inch. You the taxi? The bartender asked. Yeah. He flicked his cigarette into a puddle. He's inside. Can you help me get him to the car? Clara's stomach tightened. How bad is he? He's breathing. That's all I know. She killed the engine and stepped out into the rain. Her sneakers squelched in a puddle. The bartender let her inside, past overturned stools and broken glass. The place smelled like whiskey and iron. And there, slumped against the bar, was a man in a tailored black suit. Blood soaked his collar. His knuckles were split and bruised. One eye was swollen shut. But even half-conscious, even broken, he carried something that made Clara stop in her tracks. Power. Jesus, she whispered. He stumbled in an hour ago, the bartender muttered. Said he'd pay cash if I called him a ride. No ambulance. No cops. Clara knelt beside the man. His breathing was shallow but steady. Hey. Can you hear me? His good eye cracked open. Dark. Empty. Like staring into a well. Need. To go home, he rasped. Where's home? He mumbled something that sounded like an address, then his head lolled to the side. The bartender helped her drag him to the car. The man was heavy, all muscle and dead weight. They got him into the back seat, his head against the window, his legs sprawled across the leather. Clara's hands were shaking as she started the engine. The address he'd mumbled wasn't in her GPS. She had to type it manually. When the map loaded, her blood went cold. The Hollowstone Estate. Everyone in the city knew that name. It was whispered in diners and grocery store lines. It was the place you didn't talk about. The place you didn't go. Clara looked in the rearview mirror. The man's chest rose and fell. She could dump him at a hospital. She could call the cops. But she thought of Eli. She thought of the $200. She drove. The rain turned heavier as she left the city. The roads narrowed. Trees closed in on both sides, their branches clawing at the sky. The GPS led her down a private lane, through iron gates that stood open like a mouth. The mansion appeared through the mist. Stone walls. Dark windows. A fountain in the center of the driveway, bone dry. Clara's heart hammered. She stopped the car near the front steps and turned around. Hey. We're here. The man didn't move. She reached back and shook his shoulder. Hey. His eye opened again. Slowly, he sat up, wincing. He pulled a wallet from his jacket and tossed it onto the passenger seat.
Take.
Whatever you need. Clara opened it. Her breath left her. There had to be $3,000 inside. Maybe more. I can't.
Take it.
His voice was hoarse, but it wasn't a request. It was a command. Clara's fingers trembled as she pulled out $200. She left the rest. Thank you, she whispered. He opened the door and stepped out into the rain. For a moment, he stood there, staring at her through the window. His face was unreadable. Then he turned and limped toward the mansion. Clara shifted into reverse. That's when the headlights appeared. Two black SUVs roared up the driveway, cutting her off from the exit. Men in dark clothing jumped out, shouting, their hands reaching inside their jackets. Clara's instinct screamed. She yanked the wheel, slamming the gas pedal. Her taxi skidded across the wet grass, tires spinning, mud spraying. She heard shouting, a crack that might have been a gunshot. She didn't look back. She tore through a gap in the hedges, bouncing onto a service road. Her heart was in her throat. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. When she finally hit the main highway, she checked the mirror. No one was following. She pulled into a gas station 20 minutes later and threw up in the parking lot. Her phone buzzed. A single text from an unknown number. You forgot your tip. Attached was a photo, a black duffel bag, sitting on her doorstep. Clara stared at the screen, her blood turning to ice. Whoever that man was, he knew where she lived. Clara didn't go home that night. She drove to a 24-hour diner across town and sat in a corner booth until sunrise, watching the door. The coffee tasted like rust. Her phone sat face down on the table. She couldn't stop seeing that text, that photo. The duffel bag on her doorstep. At 6:30 a.m., she finally drove home. She had to. Eli would be waking up soon, and Mrs. Chun from upstairs watched him on nights Clara worked late. She couldn't leave him there forever. Her apartment building looked the same as always. Cracked brick, peeling paint, a broken intercom that buzzed static. The duffel bag was gone. Clara's stomach dropped. She took the stairs two at a time, her keys already in her hand. When she opened her door, Mrs. Chun was in the kitchen making eggs. Eli sat at the table in his dinosaur pajamas, drawing. Mama. He jumped up and wrapped his arms around her waist. Clara held him tight, breathing in the smell of his shampoo. Hey, baby. Mrs. Chun said you had to work extra late. I did. She kissed the top of his head, then looked at Mrs. Chun. Everything okay? The older woman nodded, but something flickered in her eyes. There was a delivery this morning. Very early. A man left a bag by your door. Clara's throat went dry. What man? I didn't see his face.
Big. Suit.
He was gone before I could ask questions. Mrs. Chun lowered her voice. Clara, I put the bag in your bedroom. I didn't open it, but it felt heavy. After Mrs. Chun left, Clara locked the door.
Twice.
She told Eli to keep drawing, then went to her bedroom and shut the door. The duffel bag sat on her bed like a sleeping animal. She unzipped it slowly.
Cash.
Stacks of it, bound in rubber bands. 20s, 50s, hundreds. And on top, a handwritten note on expensive cardstock. For the trouble. Stay safe. Clara's hands shook as she counted. $10,000. Maybe more.
She should have been relieved.
She should have been grateful. Instead, she felt like she'd swallowed broken glass. The day passed in a haze. Clara called in sick to the diner. She couldn't focus. Couldn't breathe. She kept checking the windows, expecting to see men in suits watching her building. By afternoon, she noticed the car. A black sedan, parked across the street. Tinted windows. Engine off. It had been there since noon. Clara's neighbor, Mr. Desmond, noticed too. He knocked on her door around 3. You got friends in expensive cars? He asked, scratching his beard. No. Then someone's watching you, he glanced over his shoulder. Been there all day. 2 men inside. They ain't cops. Clara's pulse hammered. She thanked him and closed the door. She had to think. She had to stay calm. But then Eli's school called. Miss Torres? The principal's voice was tight. I'm calling about an incident this afternoon. Clara's heart stopped. Is Eli okay?
He's fine.
But a man came to the school today asking questions about him. Claimed to be a family friend. Our staff didn't recognize him, so we turned him away. I wanted to inform you immediately. Clara felt the room tilt. What did he look like?
Tall.
40s.
Suit and tie.
He left when we asked for ID. Clara ended the call and grabbed her keys. She picked Eli up early, holding his hand so tight he complained. On the drive home, she checked the rearview mirror every 5 seconds. The black sedan was following them. Clara's mind raced. She couldn't lead them back to the apartment. She turned left, then right, weaving through side streets. The sedan stayed 2 cars back. Professional. She pulled into a crowded grocery store parking lot and got out, holding Eli's hand. Stay close to Mama. They went inside. Clara pretended to shop, but her eyes were on the entrance.
2 men walked in. Dark suits.
Dead expressions. But they didn't approach. They just
watched.
Clara's breath came fast. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and typed a message to the unknown number from last night.
Who are you?
Why are people following me? The reply came instantly. Where are you? Clara hesitated, then typed the address of the grocery store. Stay inside. Help is coming. 3 minutes later, the 2 men in suits turned and walked out quickly, almost running. Clara dragged Eli to the window. Outside, a new car had arrived. A sleek black SUV. 3 men stepped out, bigger, colder, deadlier. The first 2 men got in their sedan and sped away. One of the new men walked into the store. He was enormous, with a scar across his jaw. He stopped in front of Clara. Ms. Torres, we're here to take you somewhere safe. Clara pulled Eli behind her. I'm not going anywhere with you. The man's expression didn't change. Those men who were following you? They don't work for us. They work for people who want to know what you saw last night. He leaned closer. Mr. Moretti sent us to protect you. You can come with us, or you can take your chances. Clara looked at Eli's wide, frightened eyes. She thought about the men at the school, the car outside her apartment, the text that knew where she lived. She was already trapped. Fine, she whispered. But if you hurt my son.
We won't, the man said.
Boss's orders. They didn't take her to a safe house. They took her home. Mr. Moretti's orders, the scarred man said as they pulled up to her apartment. You sleep in your own bed tonight. We'll be outside. Clara didn't sleep. She sat by Eli's bed, watching him breathe, the baseball bat from her closet across her lap. Through the window, she could see the SUV parked below. Guards stood by the building entrance. She was a prisoner in her own home. Morning came slowly. Clara got Eli ready for school, made him breakfast, pretended everything was normal. But when she walked him down to the bus stop, one of the guards followed 10 steps behind. Eli looked back, confused. Mama, why is that man? Don't look at him, baby. Eyes forward. After Eli's bus left, Clara went to the diner for her morning shift. She needed normal. She needed to think. But normal was over. He was waiting at the counter. The man from last night sat on a red vinyl stool, dressed in a different suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored. The bruises on his face had faded to yellow shadows. His split knuckles were bandaged. But his eyes were clear now.
Sharp. Alive.
Everyone in the diner had gone quiet. Clara's manager, Pete, stood frozen by the kitchen door, his face pale. The man, Vince Moretti, she now knew, turned his head and looked directly at her. Ms. Torres, may I buy you lunch? It wasn't a question. Clara's throat tightened. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But Pete was watching. Her coworkers were watching. And outside, through the window, she could see more SUVs parked along the street. She tied her apron with shaking hands. I'm working. Pete doesn't mind. Do you, Pete? Her manager shook his head quickly. Take your break, Clara. Take all the time you need. Vince gestured to the booth in the back corner. Clara walked over on numb legs and slid into the seat across from him. Up close, he was different than she remembered. Older than she'd thought, maybe 40. There was gray at his temples. A scar along his jawline she hadn't noticed in the dark. But it was his presence that pressed down on her like weight. You saved my life 3 nights ago, he said quietly. I drove you home. That's all. You could have taken me to a hospital. Or the police. His eyes didn't leave hers. You didn't. You paid me not to. I paid you $200. You left $3,000 in my wallet. He leaned forward slightly.
Why?
Clara's hands curled into fists under the table. Because it wasn't mine. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or respect. The men who followed you yesterday, he continued. They work for people who think you know something about me. About my business. About that night. I don't know anything. I believe you.
They don't, he paused.
Which means you're in danger until I fix this. Clara's voice shook. Then fix it. And leave me alone. I'm trying. But it takes time. His expression softened. Barely, but enough to notice. Until then, my men will keep you safe. You and your son. At the mention of Eli, Clara's fear turned to anger. She leaned forward, her voice low and sharp. You don't get to talk about my son. You don't get to send men to his school, to our home. I didn't send anyone to his school, Vince interrupted, his voice like steel. That was them. My men stopped it before it became a problem. The anger drained out of her, replaced by cold terror. What do they want? Leverage. Information. Revenge. He glanced away briefly, and for the first time, he looked tired. I made enemies, Miss Torres. That's the life I chose. You got caught in the crossfire. I'm sorry. The apology sounded strange coming from him. Genuine. The door chimed. A small voice called out. Mama. Clara's heart stopped. Eli stood in the doorway, his backpack hanging off one shoulder. Behind him, the scarred guard looked apologetic. Early dismissal, the guard muttered. Half day. Eli ran to the booth, then froze when he saw Vince. Vince looked at the boy, and something in his face changed. The hardness melted. He smiled, small, careful. You must be Eli. Eli nodded, uncertain. I'm Vincent. Your mom helped me when I was in trouble. He reached into his jacket and Clara tensed, but he pulled out a small toy car. Red, vintage, expensive looking. I wanted to say, thank you. Eli's eyes went wide. Really? Clara wanted to refuse. Wanted to throw it back in his face. But Eli was already taking it, turning it over in his hands with wonder. What do you say, Eli? Clara whispered. Thank you, Mr. Vincent. Vince nodded. Then he stood, buttoning his jacket. He placed an envelope on the table, thicker than the last one. For your car repairs. And anything else you need. I don't want your money. I know. He looked at her one last time, something unreadable in his dark eyes. But take it anyway. For him. Then he walked out, his guards following like shadows. Eli climbed into the booth, racing the toy car across the table. Mama, is he your friend? Clara stared at the envelope. At the door, where Vince had disappeared. No, baby, she whispered. He's not my friend. But she didn't know what he was. Clara told herself she could manage this. Keep her head down. Let Vince's men stand watch. Wait for it to blow over. She was wrong. It started small. Her tires slashed in the diner parking lot during her shift. Pete found her in tears by her car, and one of Vince's guards had to drive her home. Then the phone calls. Heavy breathing. Clicks. Hang-ups at 2, 3, for in the morning. Then Eli's school called again. Miss Torres, we need you to come down immediately. Clara's hands went cold. What happened? Someone submitted a false custody claim. A man claiming to be Eli's father tried to check him out of school. We're holding him in the office, but I'm on my way. She ran 3 red lights. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it would crack her ribs. When she burst into the school office, Eli was sitting with the counselor, confused and scared. The man was gone. Security had called the police, but he'd vanished before they arrived. Clara held Eli so tight he squirmed. "Mama, you're hurting me." "I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry." That night, she didn't argue when Vince's guards suggested staying inside her apartment. One in the hallway, one by the fire escape. She locked every window, checked every lock twice, and still couldn't sleep. At midnight, her phone buzzed. Unknown number, but she knew who it was. "Are you awake?" She stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back.
Yes.
"I'm sending a car. Pack a bag for you and your son. Just for a few days."
No.
"Clara, they broke into your building 20 minutes ago. My men stopped them on the stairwell. You're not safe there anymore." Her blood turned to ice. She crept to her door and looked through the peephole. 2 of Vince's guards stood in the hallway, tense and alert. One had blood on his knuckles. Clara's knees buckled. She typed with shaking fingers. "Where would we go?" "Somewhere they can't reach you.
Trust me."
She looked at Eli, asleep in his bed, clutching the red toy car. She didn't have a choice anymore. Okay. The safe house was 40 minutes outside the city, hidden at the end of a private road. It was smaller than she expected, a 2-story cabin with stone walls and large windows overlooking woods. Beautiful in a lonely way. Vince was waiting on the porch. He'd taken off his jacket. His sleeves were rolled up. He looked more human like this. Tired. "It's secure," he said as Clara got out of the car, carrying a sleeping Eli. "For men on rotation. Cameras on every entrance. No one knows about this place except me. And your men. Men I die for." He held the door open. "Come inside." The interior was warm. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace. The furniture was simple but expensive. Everything smelled like cedar and smoke. Vince led her upstairs to a bedroom. For him, Clara laid Eli down on the bed, tucking the blanket around him. When she turned, Vince was already walking out. "Your room's across the hall," he said quietly. "Lock the door if it makes you feel safer." She followed him back downstairs. He poured himself a drink at the bar, whiskey neat. "Want one?" he asked. "No." She crossed her arms. "How long do I have to stay here?" "Until I settle things."
How?
He took a slow sip, his jaw tight. "You don't want to know." "Yes, I do." Clara's voice shook with anger. "You pulled me into this. My son is sleeping in a stranger's house because of you. I deserve to know what's happening." Vince set down his glass and looked at her. Really looked at her. Like he was seeing someone who mattered. "There's a man named Dominic Russo," he said finally. "He used to work for me. Now he's working for my enemies. He thinks you know details about my business, routes, contacts, weaknesses. He's wrong, but he won't stop until he's sure. So, what are you going to do?" "Find him. End this." His voice was cold, final. Clara's stomach twisted. "You mean kill him?" Vince didn't answer. He didn't have to. She stepped back, her hands trembling. "I can't be part of this. I can't let my son." "You're not part of it. You're protected from it." He moved closer, his voice softer. "I know what I am, Clara. I know what I've done. But I'm trying to keep you out of the ugliness. That's all I can give you. I don't want your protection. I want my life back. You'll get it. I promise." He paused, something raw flickering in his eyes. "I'm sorry you drove me home that night." Clara looked at him. This dangerous man who destroyed her quiet life, who'd brought terror to her door. And she saw, for just a second, the same brokenness she felt. "Me too," she whispered. She went upstairs and locked her door. But sleep didn't come, because downstairs, She could hear him pacing, back and forth, like a caged animal who'd forgotten how to rest. And despite everything, she wondered if he'd ever really felt safe anywhere. Even here. 3 days passed like a held breath. Clara spent them watching Eli play in the woods behind the cabin, always with a guard nearby. She cooked meals in the unfamiliar kitchen. She read books she found on the shelves. She avoided Vince. But he was everywhere. She'd wake at dawn and find fresh coffee already made. She'd hear him on the phone in his study, speaking Italian in low, dangerous tones. She'd catch glimpses of him through windows, standing on the porch, smoking, staring at nothing. He never slept. She was sure of it. On the 4th night, Clara couldn't sleep either. She came downstairs at midnight and found him in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with the precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "You cook?" she asked. He didn't startle. "When I need to think." She watched him work, garlic, tomatoes, basil. His movements were methodical, almost meditative.
"Sit," he said.
"I'm making too much anyway." Clara hesitated, then sat at the small kitchen table. "Where'd you learn to cook?" "My mother." He didn't look up. "She said if a man can't feed himself, he's not really free." "Smart woman." She was. Something in his voice closed off. Past tense. They were quiet for a while. The only sounds were the knife against the cutting board and the simmer of sauce on the stove. "Why do you do this?" Clara asked suddenly. "Do what?" "This life. The violence. The enemies." She met his eyes. "You're smart enough to do anything else." Vince set down the knife. He poured the pasta into boiling water, then leaned against the counter. "I inherited it," he said. "My father's empire. His wars. His debts." He paused. "By the time I realized I didn't want it, I was already drowning in it." "You don't just walk away from this world, Clara. It follows you. It takes everyone you love." "Then why not try?" He looked at her with something like surprise. "What?" "Walk away. Disappear. Start over." "It's not that simple." "Nothing is." Clara's voice softened. "But you're trying to protect me and Eli from your world. Maybe you should protect yourself from it too." Vince stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned back to the stove, stirring the sauce. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. "That night you picked me up, I just killed 3 men." Clara's breath caught. "They ambushed me after a meeting. I should have died." He plated the pasta, hands steady despite the confession. "But I didn't. And when I woke up in your taxi, half dead, being driven through the rain by a woman who didn't know who I was, it was the first time in 20 years I felt like a person instead of a weapon." He set the plate in front of her. Their eyes met. "You drove me home, Clara. Not to another fight. Not to another war. Home." Her throat tightened. "That wasn't home. That was a mansion." "I know," he smiled, sad, broken. "I haven't had a real home since I was 12. Clara looked down at the pasta. Steam rose between them. She picked up her fork. It was the best thing she'd ever tasted. They ate in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was something else. Something that scared her more than the danger outside. When Eli appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes, Vince stood immediately. "Hey, kid. Hungry?" Eli nodded sleepily. Vince made him a small plate, then sat with them at the table. He asked Eli about his favorite dinosaurs, listened to rambling stories about school, actually laughed, when Eli knocked over his juice. Clara watched this feared Mafia boss wipe up spilled juice with a dish towel, and something inside her shifted. After Eli went back to bed, they sat on the porch. The night was clear. Stars scattered across the sky like broken glass. "Thank you," Clara said. "For dinner. For being kind to him. He's a good kid. You raised him right." "I'm trying." Vince turned to her. "Clara, I need you to know something. When this is over, when you're safe, I'm leaving. I'm dismantling everything my father built.
Piece by piece.
It'll take time, but I'm done." "Why tell me?" Because you asked me to, his eyes held hers. Because for the first time, someone made me believe I could. The air between them felt electric. Dangerous. Clara stood abruptly. I should go to bed. Clara.
Good night, Vince.
She went inside before he could say anything else. Before she could do something stupid. But that night, lying in bed, she couldn't stop thinking about his hands in the kitchen. His laugh at her table. The way he looked at her like she was something precious. Like she was home. And that terrified her more than anything else. Clara woke to silence. Wrong silence. She'd grown used to the sounds of the safe house, guards talking in low voices, Vince's footsteps downstairs, the hum of security monitors. But now there was nothing. She checked her phone.
3:47 Uhr nachts.
Something was wrong. She crossed the hall to Eli's room. He was still asleep, curled around his toy car. She locked his door from the inside, then crept to the stairs. The living room was dark. Empty. Then she saw the front door. Wide open. Cold wind rushing in. Clara's heart slammed against her ribs. She grabbed a fire poker from the stand near the fireplace and moved toward Vince's study. The door was cracked. Light spilled through. Inside, Vince sat at his desk, perfectly still. Blood dripped from his temple. His gun lay on the floor, just out of reach. And standing behind him, pressing a pistol to the back of his head, was one of his own guards.
Marco.
The one with the scar. Miss Torres, Marco's voice was almost apologetic. Bad timing. Clara raised the poker, her hands shaking. Get away from him. Can't do that, Marco glanced at Vince.
Sorry, boss.
Nothing personal. Russo's paying triple what you do. And he promised my family stays safe if I deliver you. Marco, Vince's voice was calm, cold. Think about what you're doing. I did. For weeks, Marco's finger tightened on the trigger. Goodbye, Mr. Moretti.
Clara didn't think.
She hurled the poker with everything she had. It struck Marco's shoulder. He jerked. The gun went off. The bullet shattered the window behind Vince's head. Vince moved like lightning, driving his elbow back into Marco's ribs, spinning, grabbing the weapon. The gunshot was deafening. Marco crumpled. His eyes went wide, shocked, then empty. Vince stood over him, breathing hard, blood on his shirt. He looked at Clara.
Get Eli. Now.
Vince. Now. She ran, burst into Eli's room, scooped him up. He woke crying, confused. Mama, what's happening? We have to go, baby. Hold on to me. Downstairs, Vince was already grabbing keys, a bag, another gun. The other guards are dead. Russo's men are 5 minutes out. How do you know? Because Marco wouldn't betray me unless Russo was already on his way to finish it. He opened the back door. My car.
Go.
They ran into the night. Behind them, headlights cut through the trees. Engines roared. Vince's car, a black Mercedes, was parked behind the cabin. Clara slid into the driver's seat, Eli clutching her neck. Vince jumped in beside her. Drive. Where? Anywhere. Just drive. Clara's hands remembered the wheel. She floored it, tires screaming, gravel spraying. The Mercedes shot down the narrow road, headlights bouncing through darkness. Behind them, 3 SUVs appeared, closing fast. They're right behind us. Clara's voice cracked. Vince rolled down his window, leaned out, fired 3 shots. One SUV swerved, crashed into a tree. The other 2 kept coming. Left at the fork.
Vince shouted.
Clara yanked the wheel. The car skidded, fishtailed, straightened. Eli sobbed into her shoulder. It's okay, baby. Mama's got you. There's a chapel 2 miles ahead, Vince said, reloading. Abandoned. We can hide there until I call for backup. What backup? Your men are dead. Not all of them, he fired again. Another SUV's windshield spiderwebbed. I still have people who are loyal. How do you know Marco was the only traitor? Vince went quiet. Then, I don't. Clara's blood turned cold. She pressed harder on the gas. The chapel appeared through the mist, stone walls, broken windows, a cross tilted on the roof. Clara skidded into the overgrown parking lot and killed the engine. They ran inside. The air smelled like rot and forgotten prayers. Vince barricaded the door with a pew. Outside, engines idled. Doors slammed. Voices shouted. "They'll surround us," Clara whispered, holding Eli tight. Vince checked his gun. 4 bullets left. He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw fear in his eyes.
Real fear.
"Clara, listen to me." His voice was urgent, raw. "There's a crawl space under the altar. Take Eli and hide. No matter what you hear, don't come out until it's silent." "What about you?" "I'll buy you time." "No," her voice broke. "You can't. I got you into this." He touched her face, gentle, desperate. "Let me get you out." A window shattered. Gunfire erupted. Vince shoved her toward the altar. "Go!" Clara grabbed Eli and ran, tears streaming. She found the crawl space, pulled her son inside. Through the crack, she watched Vince take position behind a pillar. Watched him face a dozen armed men alone. And she realized, in that terrible moment, she didn't want him to die. She wanted him to survive.
To escape.
To find his way home. To her. The gunfire lasted 3 minutes. It felt like 3 hours. Clara held Eli in the darkness under the altar, his face pressed against her chest, her hand over his ear. She counted shots. Heard men screaming. Heard something heavy hit the floor. Then silence. Footsteps approached the altar. Slow, uneven. "Clara," Vince's voice, hoarse with pain. "It's over. Come out." She crawled out, Eli clinging to her. The chapel looked like a war zone. Bodies on the floor. Blood on the stone. Vince stood in the center, holding his side, his shirt soaked red. "Oh God," Clara rushed to him. "You're hit. Grazed." "I've had worse," but he swayed as he said it. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Red and blue lights flickered through broken windows. "Police?" Clara asked. "My people called them." Anonymously, Vince limped toward the back door. "We need to go before they arrive. I can't be here when they show up. You need a hospital." "I need to disappear." He looked at her, his face pale. "And so do you." They made it back to the car. Vince collapsed in the passenger seat. Clara drove while he gave directions, his voice getting weaker with each turn. They ended up at a small motel an hour outside the city. Cash only. No questions asked. Clara got Eli settled in bed. He was exhausted, traumatized into sleep. Then she turned to Vince. "Shirt off."
Now.
He peeled it away slowly. The wound along his ribs was deep, but clean. Clara used the first aid kit from the car, her hands steady despite everything. She'd learned basic medical care when Eli was born, premature, fragile. Those skills came back now. "You should have been a nurse," Vince said through gritted teeth as she stitched. "I should have been a lot of things." She tied off the thread. "Before I met you." He caught her hand. "Clara." "Don't." She pulled away, grabbed a bottle of water, handed it to him. "Just rest."
But he didn't rest.
At dawn, she found him on the phone, speaking in low tones. When he hung up, his face was unreadable. "It's done," he said. "Russo's dead. My remaining people found him 3 hours ago." Clara should have felt relief. Instead, she felt hollow. "So it's over." For now, Vince sat on the edge of the bed. "But there will be others. There always are. As long as I'm in this life, you'll never be safe. Then leave it. Like you said you would." "I am." He looked at her. "I've arranged new identities for you and Eli. Social security numbers, birth certificates, bank accounts with enough money to start over anywhere you want. A lawyer will contact you in 3 days with the details." Clara's throat closed. "What about you?"
I'm staying.
"I have to finish dismantling my father's empire. Make sure no one comes looking for you." His voice cracked slightly. "It'll take time. Maybe years." "Vince." He stood, crossed to the table, and placed 2 passports there. Hers and Eli's. New names. New lives. You're free, Clara. That's what you wanted, isn't it? What I wanted? Her voice rose. I wanted my quiet life. I wanted to raise my son without fear. I didn't want, she stopped, her hands shaking. Didn't want what? He stepped closer. I didn't want to care about you, the words tumbled out, raw and desperate. I didn't want to worry if you'd come home. I didn't want Eli asking where Mr. Vincent went. I didn't want to feel like this. Vince's expression shattered. Clara. Come with us, she whispered.
Please.
Just walk away. We can all start over. If I come with you, they'll never stop looking. Every enemy I've made will hunt you to get to me. He cupped her face with both hands. I won't let you live like that. I won't let him grow up looking over his shoulder. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Then what was all this for? To keep you alive, his thumb brushed her cheekbone. That's all that matters to me now. Vince. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, furious, full of everything they couldn't say. Clara grabbed his shirt, pulled him closer, tasting salt and goodbye. His hands tangled in her hair. Her heart broke and mended and broke again. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. I'll find you, he whispered against her forehead, when it's safe. When I've burned it all down and there's nothing left that can hurt you.
I'll find you.
Promise. I promise. But they both knew promises meant nothing in his world. At noon, a car arrived. A driver Clara didn't recognize. Vince carried a sleeping Eli to the back seat, buckled him in with such care it made Clara's chest ache. He turned to her one last time. Go be happy, he said. You deserve that. Clara got in the car, looked back through the rear window. Vince stood in the parking lot, getting smaller and smaller, until he was just a shadow.
Then he was gone.
The bakery smelled like cinnamon and hope. Clara wiped down the counter, watching through the window as waves crashed against the shore. The ocean town was small, quiet, the kind of place where everyone knew your name but didn't ask about your past. She'd renamed herself Sarah. Eli was now called Jacob. New lives. New story. But some mornings, she still woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there. Mama, I'm going to the beach. Eli, Jacob, called from the back room where he did his homework after school. Stay where I can see you. I will. He ran out, taller now, his face losing its baby softness. Almost 8 years old. He barely mentioned Mr. Vincent anymore. Children adapted. They forgot.
Clara envied that. The door chimed.
She looked up, forcing a smile. Welcome to. The words died. A man stood in the doorway. Tan coat. Different hair, shorter, lighter. Glasses she'd never seen him wear. But those eyes. Dark and endless. Those eyes she'd know anywhere. Coffee, please, he said softly. Black. Clara's hands shook as she poured. She slid the cup across the counter. Their fingers touched. Yours, she couldn't finish. Michael, he smiled, and it was real. Michael Russo. I teach history at the college 2 towns over. Russo. Her voice cracked. Dominic Russo didn't have any family. I took the name. Felt right, he lifted the cup. Poetic justice. Clara looked around.
Are you?
Is this safe? It's over. Really over, he set down the coffee. It took 14 months. But I dismantled everything. Sold the properties. Paid off the debts. Turned evidence over to the FBI that put away the people who mattered. I don't exist anymore. Vince Moretti is dead, legally and practically. And the enemies?
Gone.
In prison. Or moved on to easier targets. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. I checked every month. Made sure no one was watching you. You were safe the whole time. Tears burned Clara's eyes. You promised you'd come. I keep my promises, his voice softened. Even when it takes longer than I want. The door chimed again. An elderly woman walked in, ordering a blueberry muffin. Clara served her on autopilot, her heart thundering. When the woman left, she turned back to Vince. Why now? Because I'm finally free. No empire. No legacy. No debts, he paused. And because I couldn't stay away anymore. Every day I didn't see you felt like drowning. Clara's breath hitched. Vince. Michael, he corrected gently. Vince is gone. I want to be someone new. Someone who deserves a life. You always deserved it. Maybe, he looked around the bakery. This place. It suits you.
Warm.
Safe. Full of good things. It's small. It's home. That word hung between them, heavy with meaning. The back door opened. Eli walked in, sandy and breathless. He froze when he saw Vince. Recognition flickered across his face, slow, uncertain. Mr. Vincent. Vince knelt down, eye level with the boy. Hi, Eli. You've gotten big. I'm Jacob now, Eli said seriously. Mama says we have new names. I know. I'm Michael now, he smiled. Think you can remember that? Eli studied him. Are you staying this time? The question pierced Clara's heart. Vince looked up at her. I'd like to. If it's okay with your mom. Clara's throat tightened. Eli, Jacob, go wash up. Dinner soon. But.
Go.
Eli ran upstairs to their apartment above the bakery. Clara waited until his footsteps faded. You can't just appear after a year, she said, voice shaking. You can't just walk back into our lives. I know. We built something here. Something stable. He's finally sleeping through the night again. I know. And her voice broke. I learned how to stop waiting for you. Vince stood slowly. Then I'll leave. I just needed to see that you were happy. That was enough. He turned toward the door. Wait.
He stopped.
Clara came around the counter, stood in front of him, looked up at the man who destroyed her life and saved it in the same breath. I learned how to stop waiting, she repeated. But I never learned how to stop loving you. His expression cracked. Clara, if you stay, it's not temporary. It's not halfway. You stay, you build a life here. With us. Really with us. That's all I want, his voice was rough. I don't need power. I don't need money. I just need you. And him. That's home. Clara stepped closer. Then prove it. Be Michael. Be boring. Be normal. I can do boring, a smile tugged at his lips. I make a decent pasta. I remember. He touched her face, the gesture achingly familiar. I found my way back. You did, she kissed him, soft and sure. Welcome home. Upstairs, a window opened. Eli's voice floated down. Are you kissing Mr. Vincent? That's weird. They broke apart, laughing. Real laughter. Light and free. Vince called up, It's Michael. And yes, deal with it, kid. Okay, Michael. A pause. Are you staying for dinner? Vince looked at Clara, questioning. She took his hand.
Yeah.
He's staying for dinner. And maybe, just maybe, forever.